Call up our third panel. That will consist of Clayton Sinyai, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, Executive Director, Catholic Labor Network, Ernesto Galeas, Catholic Labor Network, Kunta Bedney, I saw Mr. Bedney here, Council Representative, Eastern Atlantic States Regional Council of Carpenters, and Alexis Blackman, Director of Client Development, Casa Ruby. Is Ms. Blackman here? How about Monique Reiser, Executive Director, Urban Alliance, DC. Ms. Reiser, welcome. While you approach, is it Mr. Sinyai?
I say Sinyai, but I'm not particular.
Well, however you pronounce it is how I will as well. Mr. Sinyai, welcome to the council. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, council members, for giving me some time today. I'm going to be talking a little bit about those pervasive problems in the construction industry with wage theft. My name is Clayton Sinyai, and I'm the Executive Director of the Catholic Labor Network, a nonprofit, faith-based worker justice advocacy group based at Georgetown University in the District of Columbia. One of our key initiatives is the Mid-Atlantic Construction Wage Theft Project, a research and action project targeting this problem. As we have seen in the two major settlements recently secured by the district's Attorney General from Power Design and Rock Spring Contracting, some large construction firms in the District of Columbia have adopted the practice of using what they call labor brokers as intermediaries between themselves and their employees. These brokers, in turn, misclassify these workers as independent contractors, paying them on 1099s, which denies them overtime pay or workers' compensation coverage in the case of an injury, and it shifts the burden of employer payroll tax contributions to the workers themselves. In order to measure the extent of the problem, last year we pulled a list of 50 major area commercial construction sites in the District of Columbia and Maryland from the Dodge Reports, a standard building industry source for construction project lettings. 43 of these projects were located in the District of Columbia. Our field representative, Ernesto Galeas, who you'll hear from next, then visited each site to find out if the contractors there were engaged in violations of the law. Mr. Galeas found electrical contractors working on 16 of the DC building sites at the time of his visit. On seven of those sites, or 44%, the contractor was using labor brokers and misclassifying employees as independent contractors. Mr. Galeas found mechanical contractors, that is, plumbers, pipe fitters, or HVAC installers, working on 17 of the DC area building sites, or the DC building sites at the time of his visit. On 10 of those, or 59%, the contractor was using labor brokers and misclassifying employees as independent contractors. Mr. Galeas found drywall contractors working on 15 of the DC building sites at the time of his visit. On 7 of those, or 47%, the contractor was using labor brokers and misclassifying employees as independent contractors. An 8th contractor didn't even bother setting up a misclassification scheme, but simply paid employees cash under the table, again evading required payroll taxes. Clearly, Rock Spring and Power Design are not aberrations. A substantial share of the contractor community has adopted as a standard business practice a form of payroll fraud that cheats workers, competitors, and taxpayers. It's time for DOES and the district to move beyond exclusive reliance on a complaint-driven process for identifying wage theft and payroll fraud and adopt strategic enforcement tools to clean up an industry witnessing increasing levels of lawlessness that rewards bad actors and penalizes workers with wage theft. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sinyai. Mr. Galeas, welcome to the council.
Thank you very much. Good morning. My name is Ernesto Galeas, and I work for the Catholic Labor Network as organizer and field representative working on our Mid-Atlantic construction wage theft.
Mr. Galeas, I'm going to ask you to pull your microphone a little closer to you, or maybe speak in your outdoor voice, as a parent would say, so we can catch you on the microphone.
Thank you. Once again, my name is
Very,
Ernesto
very good.
Galeas, and I work for Catholic Labor Network as organizer and field representative working on our Mid-Atlantic construction wage theft project. My responsibility are visit the different construction job sites in Washington, D.C. and Maryland and find out if the wage theft is happening in these job sites. So far, I have visited more than 40 jobs, and what I have found is very depressing, sad, and frustrating. Some companies of plumbing, electricity, drywall, and HVAC are so corrupt because in order to increase their profit, they sell their job to labor brokers who do not pay the right wages, overtime, no tax deductions, and do not provide the tax form such as W-2 or 1099 for workers at the end of the year. The wage theft is a reality that is affecting many workers, especially those undocumented workers who are the favorite of these labor brokers because they pay them what they want and make them work 10, 12 hours per day without receiving 1 time and a half for the extra hours. In addition, the labor brokers hire workers without any experience in the job that they will perform. For instance, I visit the job at 3900 Wisconsin Avenue Northwest, and I found the electrical contractor has a labor broker who has a couple workers without experience on electricity. The worker that I talked with had moved from Atlanta, and he was working in a restaurant down there. But in this particular job, he is an electrician. Another example that I visited at 600 Rhode Island Avenue, and the plumbing contractor had using a labor broker as well. The worker that I did talk with just has arrived to the United States from Guatemala, but in this job, he is a plumber. Finally, these labor brokers are in violation with the labor law because they don't pay to their workers overtime or in the right wages, and the tax law because they don't pay federal and state taxes, Social Security, unemployment, and so on. How many schools could be built with that money? How many roads could be fixed? How many new agents could the agency hire to prosecute these cases of wage theft? Please enforce the law. We need to eliminate this practice and think as you were one of them. Think that your son or daughter is being cheated, and what would you do? Would you buy or rent an apartment that has been built without the skilled workers? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Galeas, and I will have some questions for you. To all 4 of you for testifying. First, Mr. Galeas and Mr. Sinyai, I hope you will provide written testimony to the committee because you offered a lot of dense information and numbers that were very interesting, and I'm going to query you about a few of them, but we certainly want that for the record. Terrific. First, help me understand the model and what role a labor broker plays at a construction site. Why would a general contractor work with a labor broker? What do they do?
Primarily, it's a way of outsourcing responsibility. The labor broker operates like a temp agency.
Okay.
Although and is the actual employer of record of the employees, even though they report to the main the contractor who secured these employees through the broker and follow the directions of that contractor.
Okay, so a labor broker, and is it mostly, you were saying a labor broker is sort of the equivalent of a temp agency for construction. Is that because the jobs might only require 1 or 2 days worth of work? So you're working primarily with day laborers, or are they finding workers? Are they more of a recruitment agency for the contractor or the subcontractor?
What came out in the power design case which was one of the premier examples of the use of labor brokers, is that the Power Design was apparently letting out the work, organizing a system of labor brokers who in turn were misclassifying the employees that they brought to the job as independent contractors. They were also putting unlicensed electricians on the job.
So do the labor brokers, are
these-
they an LLs, I'm sorry to interrupt, are they like a limited liability company? Do the workers work for the labor broker, or do they work for the company, or the independent contractors?
In the official records, they work for the labor broker.
I see, okay.
And
okay.
that puts a layer in between the employer and the fraud that's going on when the misclassification happens by the labor broker in turn. In the case of Power Design, they were actually cultivating and helping people, the labor brokers, set up paper companies in order to bypass responsibility for payroll taxes and for workers' comp and for all of those.
Catholic Labor
elements.
Network is aware of the labor brokers working in the city, correct? Have you reported these labor brokers either to the Department of Employment Services or to the Office of the Attorney General?
Our initial, the initial part of the Mid-Atlantic Construction Wage Theft Project was a research project in which we spent the past year trying to find out whether the problem was whether Rock Spring and Power Design and these that have been brought forward are anomalies, or whether this was a standard practice in the industry. So for our first phase of the work, we were simply visiting in order to find out what was going on a random sample of job sites, so that we actually could say with some confidence that, yes, it looks like in some major construction trades, half the business is being conducted this way. Mm-hmm. In the year to come, this is a research and action project, and Mr. Galeas has begun to work with individual workers and try to counsel them on their opportunities for where to go and file complaints, whether it's through DOES or taking a private right of action. Mm-hmm. And he can tell you more about the initial responses that he's getting from the workers he's spoken to about this.
Mr. Galeas?
The visit that I've been, the jobs that I've been visiting, I've been finding all those many labor brokers, and some of them they are paid by day, like $120 per day. It doesn't matter if they work 8 or 10, 12 hours a day,
And they're paid through the labor broker or
yes,
through the contractor?
through the labor brokers in personal checks, and sometimes if they get paid in personal check, they don't get any tax deduction, no overtime either, and or they get paid in cash.
Mm-hmm. And have you referred any of these workers to the Department of Employment Services?
I've been trying to explain to them, to educate them through this, but most of them are undocumented workers.
Okay.
And they think if they come forward, they can be under the radar of the immigration. So they are pretty scared.
The prior panel spoke about strategic enforcement and community groups that have been given money by the city to work with workers who might be victims of wage theft, precisely to create a comfort in coming forward so that they can be paid properly. Have you worked at all with any of our organizations? One of them is the Ethiopian Community Center, another is Echelon Community Services. Do you have any engagement, encountered them at all?
Not directly, no. We work a little bit with the Just Pay Coalition and know them through there. Because of our focus in the construction trades, we're much more likely to work with the construction unions. The other two groups seem to be focused on other sectors of the economy where wage theft is a problem.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Bedney,